the Ravens Monday night. Matt Barrows. Good morning, Matt. How are you?
I'm doing well. So you want me to talk about what they're calling Bloody Christmas out here? Okay.
Yeah, it was different. You know, we've had a few days to talk about it, Matt. The 3 losses in a row. Trent Williams is out. Debo was hurting. The defense looked to be all, goofy. You had Coach Wilkes coming down the sideline. You needed the bye week. You got Chase Young. There are no excuses here. Everybody's playing pretty much. Everybody's healthy. Everything's a go. And boy, the Ravens came in and just laid the smackdown.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the explanation is easy. The 49ers offense, usually scoring 30 points a game and, getting a lead before the half and then extending the lead after the half. They did the opposite. I mean, they were terrible. They turned the ball over and gave the Ravens short field. The Ravens had 2 touchdown scoring drives. One was 3 plays. One was 1 play. So, I mean, I felt like going back, the defense had lapses. There were a couple of big plays that they gave up, and they were, typical Lamar Jackson plays where they got the guy dead to right, and he escapes and then either, makes a big play with his arm or makes a big play with his feet. But other than that, I thought it was a solid defensive effort. They went in determined to not allow the Ravens to run all over them. Ravens had the best rushing attack in the league, averaging more than 160 yards a game. And the 49ers held them to 102. So I think that they felt like their game plan was solid. I mean, this is all in the context of, okay, what happens if they face the Ravens again in Las Vegas? I think the 49ers would feel good about their game plan with the caveat, hey, we just got to get this Lamar Jackson guy on the ground this time, which obviously is easier said than done.
Matt, if they were to play again and they had a similar type game plan, the end result was Christian McCaffrey had over 100 yards, had a 1 big run, but some other good runs and good averages, but they didn't seem to have the balanced run to pass. Part of that was they did get down, but I didn't feel like they were really looking to run early that often either. So do you think if they matched again, would they look to the ground game a little more, which truly seems to be in Kyle Shanahan's DNA?
Well, I mean, if the 49ers defense was content with its game plan, then the Ravens defense was very content with how they played Brock Purdy in that group. And Shanahan was asked that, and he said, the plan was to be balanced early on. They came out with 5 straight throws and moved the ball down the field and only were stopped with that interception in the end zone. But the Ravens obviously were showing something that told Shanahan that, the run's not there. I'm gonna pass it. And they did move the ball, and they were successful, and they were going to score at least a field goal probably until that interception. So it's a good question. I mean, it could be that the 49ers would be sort of running into a defense stack to stop the run if they had tried to do it at that point. My guess is that the Rams ran the ball very well against the Ravens. The Browns did too. I'm guessing that the Ravens saw that and they anticipated that the 49ers would come out running, and they decided to take that away. I think it's interesting that they decided, okay, you know what, we're going to challenge Brock Purdy instead of Christian McCaffrey in this game, and they made that bet, and they won it. They won it in a big way.
Matt Barrows joining us. One of my favorite things to say this week in a snarky way is, unless I'm wrong, Kyle Shanahan's system was present Monday. So was Christian McCaffrey, Debo Samuel, and Brandon Ayuk. Therefore, if we follow the national narrative on MVP, we can't blame Brock Purdy one iota for anything having to do with this loss.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yes. It took me a second there, but I get it. If you're going to ding him for one thing, you can't ding him for the very opposite as well. The question is, what was happening that turn Brock Purdy from, the second coming of Drew Brees to, a late 7th round quarterback.
Yeah.
And I just felt like, he's always one step ahead of everything. He's seeing things, faster than the coaches do sometimes on the sideline. And that wasn't happening in this game. The windows were tighter. The anticipation wasn't quite there. The Ravens obviously were doing something to throw him off his game. And, if there is a rematch, that's it. I mean, that's going to be the storyline of the 2-week run-up. You can Brock Purdy overcome, the one team this year that's really thrown something at him that he couldn't handle.
Matt, the other thing I think with this team, and it's a good situation that they create more times than not, and generally when they win, you said it earlier, like they get ahead or they score late in the half and score to start the second half and start to build some separation. I feel like they are really good and almost unbeatable when they get ahead, and especially if they get a 2-score lead. I mean, just good luck catching them. But how about the games like this game when they are behind and maybe they're off schedule? That doesn't seem to me when they are at their best. How do they, maybe they're never in these situations again, but if they are, how do they get better at that specific thing?
Yeah, that's the big question, because that's what happened during that 3-game losing streak. To his credit, Purdy in Cleveland did engineer a last-minute drive that would have won the game, but Jake Moody missed the field goal. So he can do that, and he is good. You see the quarterbacks who excel in those scenarios use their improvisational skills, off-schedule stuff, creativity, and Purdy has that. And I think he's got a great deal of creativity. But it just hasn't happened. The come-from-behind game, a dramatic come-from-behind game, hasn't happened for him yet. It's as simple as a defense is not having to play the run as much in that scenario. So they're dropping their linebackers into coverage. The windows are tighter. Purdy can't read the keys as easily as he can when the 49ers have a lead. It's more difficult. Most quarterbacks don't win those games when they're trailing by a couple of touchdowns in the second half. But it's the one missing element on his resume right now. So it'll be interesting if he can do that. He's a very, very quick learner. So you would think that that's going to happen at some point in the near future. These next games are not going to be easy ones. I think everybody saw the Rams a couple of weeks ago, and they look really tough. The 49ers are going to be really beat up for this game. Short week, lots of injuries, new quarterback in Washington. So that game might be tougher than a lot of people would have anticipated at the beginning of the season. So there might be some opportunities for those kind of come from behind scenarios.
Matt, can you just real quick give us, to the best of your knowledge, an injury update going into this weekend?
Yeah, Eric Armstead probably isn't going to play, and that's a big question mark about when he will be able to come back. He missed 8 games, half a season last year with the same injury. So if you extrapolate that, then you're talking about him, this injury bleeding into the playoffs. They just signed Sebastian Joseph Day, a defensive tackle. I don't know how much he's going to be able to play in Washington, but it's looking like he could get a lot of minutes if Armstead is out. The other guys that they're worried about, they've got Ambry Thomas. He's got a hamstring injury that kind of means that there could be either Jason Verrett, who's probably on a pretty strict snap count, or a rookie, Darrell Luter, playing in this game. And then Aaron Banks is the other big one. Left guard could mean that John Feliciano is back at left guard and Spencer Burford is back in the lineup at right guard there. So some shuffling along an offensive line that pretty much has stayed intact the last 2 seasons. They really haven't seen a lot of changes along that line. I think that's helped Purdy out quite a bit.
Man, I know they beat a couple of the teams I'm going to ask you about, but the other one they just lost to. So if they could run into at some point in this journey, the Cowboys again, the Eagles again, and they probably would love it if it was the Ravens again, because that means they made the Super Bowl. But of those three, who would give you the most concern if the Niners faced them again?
Yeah, I mean, the team that they just got blown out by, I think, because of what I just described, is that you can have the greatest defensive game plan in the world, but all it takes is Lamar Jackson sidestepping a tackle for a sack to turn into a touchdown. So I think that the 49ers would feel good about that rematch. I mean, it wouldn't be a case where, oh, gee whiz, this team has our number and there's no way we can win. I would actually pick the 49ers, I think, because I think they would have real motivation. It would be a fantastic game. I think the whole league, given the viewership numbers from the Christmas night game, would love that scenario. I think it would go, in terms of toughest matchup, I think it would go Ravens, Eagles, Cowboys in that order.
Matt, just getting existential for a second. There's something just so weird about the Niners, this current regime and quarterbacks. It seems like a lifetime ago, but it wasn't, that we were talking about Jimmy G and Trey Lance and what's going to happen. And then this Brock Purdy guy shows up weirdly, and you have the debacle in Philly in the playoffs. And then this year has been the Brock Purdy narrative is, you've been in this business longer than I have, but it's been one of the most interesting things I've seen nationally and locally. This Disney story about the Mr. Irrelevant, the most important low or non-pick since Kurt Warner, to do the things that he's been doing, and then see, and maybe you have a different feel here, Matt, but to see so many in the national media almost not just trying to discredit what he's doing, but to seemingly root against it. And then he finally puts out this stinker clunker of a game in a terrible moment. And you almost saw this, there was this rejoicing, and it turns everything on its ear to me, in the sense, obviously I'm biased, I'm a Niner fan, but it seems like this guy should be nationally celebrated, to be a heroic role model type figure, not to mention how likable he is, but it just seems different. And I'm curious, as somebody who's closer to the team than anybody, your thoughts on that whole narrative and the covering of him by the media this year.
I mean, I can only guess that sort of that gleeful reaction that you're describing is sort of a reassurance. Everything's back in the natural order. We didn't think this guy was going to be very good. We didn't evaluate him very highly. He almost wasn't drafted. Finally, our instincts about him are being reaffirmed. But it is interesting because he does everything right, and that's why I think he's going to ultimately, rebound nicely from that outing, is because he's so grounded and he's so smart. And like I describe him as he just turned 24 yesterday. I describe him as a 52-year-old in a 24-year-old's body. I mean, he's just so mature that I just don't see this flummoxing him for very long. And I guarantee you, he's not going through his social media and stewing over all the national takes and stuff like that, which, by the way, the previous quarterbacks have done. Yeah. They're sort of Colin Kaepernick loved that stuff. I mean, he wanted to build that chip on his shoulder as high as he could get it, and sort of kind of embraced all the hatred around him to do that. I don't think that's sustainable for a career. might get you hyped up for a couple games, but I think that Brock Purdy is in it for the long haul, and that his approach is that of a long-time quarterback.
I mean, I guess there's still a chance, certainly, that he could win the MVP. There was some damage done this last weekend, and certainly some shine now on Lamar Jackson. But if I asked you, Matt, who's the team MVP, who would you say?
Yeah, I'd still go with Brock Purdy. I'm not gonna change my mind because he had one bad game in 15. Like I said earlier, I mean, he's the one who is distributing the ball to all these guys. He's the one that has the ball in his hands on every play. 49ers still are within reach of that 1,000-yard receiver mark. I think George Kittle's right on the edge. I think he's got 991 or something like that. Deebo Samuel's the one who's the question mark. He's got 832 right now. So he needs 2 really solid games to hit 1,000. But that's such a blue moon stat. And it reflects so well on the guy throwing the ball. Oh, and by the way, Christian McCaffrey is going to have 550 or some huge number that's shy of 1,000, but still impressive. Brock Purdy is the guy. So to me, he probably edges out McCaffrey. I thought McCaffrey was the best player on offense on Monday for sure, as he has been for a few games this year. But there's a reason why the QB usually gets the MVP award. It's a QB league.
Matt, does anybody left in Washington care about beating a Shanahan?
I think that they care about beating a Chase Young. I wrote a story today with our Washington beat writer Ben Standig, and so the Washington fans, being 3 hours ahead, got a head start on the comments. They're pretty vicious. I mean, this is a guy who was drafted number 2 overall, who's going to be the savior of that franchise. He's a local kid and local, like within, a few minutes drive of FedEx Field, and did not live up to those expectations. Now, there's a lot of animus, shall we say, about him. So I think that's the last thing that Commanders fans want to see is Chase Young coming in and getting a couple of sacks on Sunday.
So really, any given Sunday type of thing, injuries aside, do you see the Redskins having much for this, what will be a very angry team?
Well, we call them the Commanders now.
Oh, God. Sorry. Yeah, it's sleep. Commanders, I apologize.
Like I said, the 49ers just had a big game on Monday night. It's a short week. It's the end of the season. We've seen some fatigue issues with this team. I thought that they were more prominent in the Cardinals game than in the Ravens game, but this is what happens at the end of the season. So I don't think that the 49ers will lose this, but it certainly wouldn't be a huge shock if it's one of these games that's close. There's a bad turnover. The 49ers don't do that end of the half thing where they score and then they get the ball back. I can see it being a close game, and when you've got a close game, anything can happen. So, I'm not real certain about a win, but I think the 49ers are going to handle business.
That is the Athletic's Matt Barrows, joining us each and every week, beat writer for your San Francisco 49ers. Obviously, Matt, next Monday is New Year's, so enjoy that. We'll see if we can't grab you later in the week, hopefully after a big bounce-back win against the Commanders. Thank you for everything you do throughout the year for us, Matt. It's always appreciated, and we really do appreciate you coming on the show each and every week.
Well, thanks for having me, and a happy New Year to you and Jason, and I will talk to you next week.
All right, take care. That is Matthew Barrows of The Athletic. Make sure you get a subscription and check him out, along with Sam Amick, our earlier guest, at theathletic.com, and download that app. We will take a break. Jason, when we get back, what to watch tonight, some basketball, some football, and also why it's good to be an NBA owner if you're selling your team. I got some numbers for you that might surprise you.
And don't forget, I got a bowl game.
Oh, the bowl game. I forgot about that. The bowl game. Is this a part two?
Yeah, but
Part two. We'll do that next. Sactown Sports.
The 49ers have secured their playoff berth, and now they chase the NFC's top seed.
Purdy out of the shotgun, looks left, throws end zone. Caught! George Kittle in the back of the end zone. Touchdown! San Francisco!
Check out all the 49ers games with Greg Papa and Tim Ryan
on your home for the playoff-bound 49ers. Sactown Sports and Sactown